Giga India is coming. No, this is not a rerun from 3 years ago or 1 year ago when I shared details and speculation at that time that were qualified, if a bit ambitious and perhaps premature. It looks like, following a meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, that things may be finally moving forward in the subcontinent, and it's very exciting. So what am I going to do about it? Well, I'm going to bring on somebody who knows a few things about Tesla himself. Herbert from Brighter is joining us today to have a chat about this exciting news. Welcome, Herbert. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. It is that time. Elon has met with Prime Minister Modi and shook hands. That's great. I guess that's not a picture of them shaking hands, but you get the idea. We've seen a handful of job openings in the suburbs of Mumbai, which tells me that it's going into a posh neighborhood, which would make sense. That is Tesla's strategy. If you look at all the various places, I've been to the Tesla locations in Mexico City, and they say, well, Mexico is a rough and tumble kind of place. Mexico has nice neighborhoods, and that's where Teslas are sold. But what have you heard? What do you make of this?
Yeah, I think this is good news. There's a lot of signals here to point that this is actually happening, and it's more than just selling cars. So that's the first step, right? As you and I have reported several times before, India's pretty protectionist. Okay. They prevent anybody from bringing cars in and selling it into India. Very high tariffs, import fees, import duties of 100% sometimes. And what is it now? 10,000 cars you can bring in. Other than anything more than that, that's a tiddly squat number. But now it looks like there must have been some sort of negotiation here after Elon met with Prime Minister Modi last week. Looks like that they probably allowed Tesla to sell their cars into India. Now, they wouldn't just do that. They're not going to just let you bring in cars to sell in there. They're going to have to kind of tie that with building a gigafactory in India, manufacturing in India as well. That's kind of one of their goals. Is India wants to become a powerhouse in electric vehicles. They've been waiting for years to do this. China has done this and they've done it very successfully. India has ambitions. So what do? They let the cars in. So we'll hear more about what the tariffs are. The tariffs have become probably low or even zero for Tesla. They'll probably bring in their cars from Germany, sell it into India, into these two showrooms. That's the first step. And then what we've heard from the government of India themselves, again, we've heard this so many times before, we don't know how real this is, but they are now saying we've identified a couple spots near Pune that could be good locations for Tesla to build their gigafactory.
So it was 3 years ago when I made the first video. I
Right.
almost don't like linking it because the quality was so different and poor back then.
Oh,
But this
city.
is, but
Mhm.
this is, it was a ton of work to make it. But what I looked at was, I analyzed all the factors. How many STEM graduates do you have? How many universities with engineering programs do you have? How many car sales? How much domestic manufacturing? Political will, political stability, exchange rates, export possibilities. It'd be great if Giga Mumbai could be the right-hand drive export capital for Tesla for the world. It's not entirely clear how well that would work due to uh, uh, India's
Mhm.
not always friendly import export policies and other countries' reactions to them, but there are a lot of reasons why this would make sense. I would say that if you're only allowed to bring in 10,000 a year, maybe they wouldn't come from Germany. Maybe they would try to sell as many of them from the SX and Cybertruck as possible, because
Yeah.
there is an appetite among the ultra rich for some of these vehicles. Um, and 10,000 is a drop in the bucket when you've got over a billion people. Your top 1% is still 10 million people. If 1 in 1,000 of the 1%, if the top 1/10 of 1% is then buying a car, you've got some room to make good margin on those early vehicles, because you're not going to be selling all that many. But with two locations, yeah, if selling 5,000 a year per location would be a tall order, but I'm sure they could do it. So when we look at this, Let's share this one. Tesla's car is coming soon to India. Yes, they are advertising for staff. Flip flops. Um, I would argue it is not Tesla that has flip flopped, but the Indian government. At one point, they had said that they were open to it, and then they introduced new protectionist policies, as you mentioned a minute ago, that would strengthen the position of Tata and other domestic brands at the cost of foreign brands like Tesla and BYD. And as I mentioned
Mm.
on your show, BYD tried to build a factory in India, got halfway into it, and just canceled. They just canceled it. You know what? It's clear India doesn't want us here. We're not going to try and force the issue if you guys don't want it.
Okay, I've got a couple things I think
Yes,
a little bit counter to what you're saying. So number one,
please.
I don't, of course, I don't think that they're going to bother with 10,000 cars per sale. That's just Titty Squats, Model S, X, and Cybertruck. Who cares? I don't think that that's something that they really, really care about. The market for India is going to be the lower cost vehicles. And so they've been wanting India to renegotiate the tariffs, bring that down, then they're going to bring in. So I think the timing wise, I do think it was Tesla's decision, not India. Um, you can see that the reason why what happened here was, curiously, it's actually Modi who flew to US to meet with Elon. And I think that what happened was a couple things, right? Giga India was hot and heavy. They'd already negotiated. India's doing everything they can. They want to, they definitely, they desperately want to build an electric vehicle industry there. They want to have the supply chain. They want to make their Tata Motors even stronger, go global. They want to do what China did. I think Tesla pulled back for a couple of reasons. One is that the economic environment, and he said, I'm not going to build these cars there right now. I'm going to pull back, and they rechanged their strategy in the U.S. as we kind of documented. And I think the second reason is China. China probably came back and says, "Look, I don't want you to work with India. We want you to double down here," and he pulled off. Now, why did he now flip now? Why did Tesla decide today to go build a factory there? A couple of reasons. One is the more affordable vehicles is now coming out. That's what's going to sell in India very, very in big numbers. And so that makes sense. But the second thing is, I'm curious, how does that set Tesla up for their negotiations with China? This could be a poker chip. They could be saying, China, you better give us FSD license now. Otherwise, we're going to move forward with this Gigafactory because you can't be holding us hostage. And this whole idea that China could flip at any moment, you want to have another location in the Southeast Asia to be able to kind of service that market. So I think it's Tesla's choice. Maybe I'm being naive, but that's where I'm seeing things right now.
That is a poker at a level that I am incapable of playing. I
Sure.
don't I don't know if I assume Tesla will get FSD approval in China. And I don't think that once they do, they would just pull the plug on India. But I
Mm,
don't know enough about Chinese politics to know
right.
if they would say, I know that this won't hurt China's manufacturing capabilities at Giga Shanghai, but I still don't want you to do it. I
Right.
know we're not exclusive, but I don't want you dating other people. So I don't know if I don't know enough about it to have an opinion on that. Uh, what I would say is, I do think they would. I think a reason to focus on SX and Cybertruck is because you can make 10 grand a piece, and at 10,000 vehicles, that's 100 million in margin that you would get extra, which would pay for like 5% of the factory per year, just from those elite exclusive vehicles. And with numbers that small, 10,000, you don't need to get aggressive on your pricing. I think you can keep the pricing high, and the fact that they cost half of what they did a year ago,
Mhm.
and really that 100 million would not be margin, it would not be profit, it would be reinvested in charging infrastructure. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but I see your point. We do have one more story to share here, which is after almost a decade after Tesla first launched pre-orders for its cars in India, it's staffing up. Well, it's not pre-order. No, you can buy cars. I don't think this is entirely accurate, but the recruitment efforts come just days after the meeting. Tesla's long sought to break into India, the world's third largest auto market, if you include 2 and 3 wheel vehicles, which maybe you shouldn't. It is millions of cars. Uh, again, depending what you call a car. What vehicle or vehicles would Giga Mumbai make?
I've been asking this question as many people as possible. I asked you that question just an hour ago.
Yes. And now I want your opinion.
Yeah, I think it doesn't make sense if it's anything other than the more affordable vehicles.
The
That's what
most
I'm.
affordable. It has to be.
Yeah, yeah.
Something that you can manufacture quickly, easily, cheaply, in fantastic numbers. That's the only way they will be establishing a domestic supply chain. If you're going to do that, you need volume. So,
And it could be the cyber caps as well. I had a different contrarian view of the cyber cap and FSD. So people just jump to the conclusion that they'll say India, Philippines, these are going to be the most difficult places to have robotaxi. It's just wild, crazy driving there. It'll be the last place that you'll implement robotaxi. But I drove in the Philippines about 10, 15, maybe 15, 20 years ago. And I found it to be the easiest place to drive because there's no rules. Okay, now, of course, I'm not talking about the entire country. I'm talking about specifically this one area in Manila where everybody was everywhere. Nobody's following the lines. Nobody's following the stoplights. So if I wanted to go from one part of the city to another part of the city, I look at the map and I go, okay, I'm going that way. And that's it. I drive that way. Now, there's cars everywhere, so all you're doing is avoiding and avoiding and avoiding, and getting in and getting in and getting in whenever you can. That was it. And I thought, well, that's actually not that hard for a robo-taxi to just not be hit and find an area that you can drive in and drive there, but always go one direction.
It is easy for a human to look at something that is difficult for us and say, therefore, it must be difficult for a computer to do. But computers are very good at things that we're very bad at, and remarkably good at things that we think we're uniquely good at. And Kyle Connor went to China. He experienced a variety of driver assistance systems, ADAS, that were very advanced. Even in city driving, even in chaotic Chinese urban settings, if they can do it with something that I believe is less sophisticated than what Cortex has generated with version 13, I'm confident that they could solve it.
Yeah, but the other thing is, but what's his name? Like one of them, Ashoka Swami himself said it's going to be difficult to do it in India. So, okay, yeah, I'll trust his opinion more than mine. So it is going to be very difficult to do robotaxi, but that's where they're going to build these things, low cost. People are very used to not buying cars necessarily. The mass is going to be using some sort of these what do you call these electric rickshaws. But I think a cybercab will do very, very well there. We'll see if that's where that's what it's going to do.
I've seen people say Tesla should make a cyber tuk-tuk, and I disagree. I don't think that's it's definitely not an objective. There are companies that already make those. Get one of those if that's what you want. I don't think you'll be as happy with it. The safety isn't there. There's a bunch of reasons why that wouldn't necessarily make sense. Does this mean that I will be going to India in the next couple of years? I might have to, right?
I think you will be.
I think I will. What I've heard from people who've traveled to India on business is it's unless you're part of an organized tour group or have people on the ground, it can be a pretty unpleasant experience with the cultural difference and the language difference and all that. So if you are in India and you are somewhere that is relevant to the electric space, maybe reach out to me and we can start a conversation now. So when the time is right, we can make it happen, because it's very far and it's very expensive to get there. And it is a whole different place, a whole place I've never been. So that would be interesting to see. Man, I think we did it, Herbert. I think we got through it. I would like to know in the comments, what did we miss? What do we misunderstand? Leave it down there. You got to leave it down there. How else will we know? The videos where I try to make you a little bit smarter, and in the comments is where you make Herbert brighter. But it's everybody else, like, subscribe, stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you, clever robots in India.